I have been asked to speak about our experience and learning as an organization in the process of transformation, specifically from the point of view of the people dimension. Think transformation and several images are evoked in my mind. For instance, the good old morphing of the caterpillar into a butterfly which we just saw on the screen. Then the 5th century Athens with the Battle of Marathon, a seminal event in the history of Western civilization. Should the small Athenians have lost to the might of the Persians, the course of history could well have been different. For Athens was the cradle of democracy. To convey the victory, Philippides ran over 40 kilometers from Marathon to Agora. "Rejoice, we have conquered," he said. And in this run lies the genesis of the Olympics, a truly transformational process. Or for that matter, 14th century Florence, characterized by a period of intellectual and artistic renewal under the Medici family, which signaled the Renaissance movement. And now zoom in to the modern day cell phone armed vegetable vendors on the streets of Mumbai. Transformation is about turning aspirations into realities, converting setbacks into opportunities. It is about courage of conviction. It is about what Charles Handy calls the creation of new alchemists from ordinary people. Transformation to me is the end result of a highly energized process that combines human ingenuity with its indomitable spirit to make new things happen and to create value. Very often the transformational process can be so absorbing that its lessons reveal themselves long after the process has been completed. And sometimes it takes a speaking invitation like today's to go on a reflective journey on how we have changed and what the lessons learned have been. As I look back on our group's own journey over nearly a decade, I do believe that we have changed in some very fundamental ways. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that the genetic coding of our group stands substantially altered. We have become a transnational, multicultural entity, more than 72,000 people, drawn from 20 different nationalities, of whom more than 70% are under the age of 40. 10 years ago, women executives were very few and far between. Today, women constitute more than 6% of our total numbers, and the number is on the rise. As we venture into new countries the world over, our group's geography has changed phenomenally as well. So has the work ethos that has been shaped to stay contemporary and relevant in a new world. However much as we have changed, we continue to constantly reinvent ourselves. Let me quote Alvin Toffler, who said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn and relearn." And in fact, much of the change process for us has been about learning, unlearning and relearning. And I have tried to cull out for you the 9 most important lessons which we believe are key to our transformational process and which I hope would be useful to you. The first question that to my mind needs to be addressed is, what is it about the transformation process that needs to be managed? And it is my personal view that for those at the helm of an organization in the throes of change, management is restricted largely to 2 broad areas. The first is the ability to manage time effectively, because an organization in a state of flux throws up many more demands on your time than one in a steady state. And the second area is that of energy management, because the process of change can be rather exhausting, both physically and mentally, and requires sustained levels of high energy over a prolonged period of time. Other than these 2 areas that need active managing, and I say this with some trepidation since I'm speaking under the aegis of the All India Management Association, I believe that the process of transformation is mostly about leadership. Leadership at all levels in the organization, as much as leadership from the team at the top. It is about plugging into the hearts and minds of people. It is about rallying them around to a compelling and exciting vision of the future. It is about upping the quality of the imagination of the organization. So the first lesson for us has been that the process of change is perhaps 90% about leadership and only 10% about managing. Second, back in 1996, we launched for the first time a corporate identity. The intent at one level was simply to have a group identity that would serve as a corporate logo. We chose the rising sun. That the impact of a symbol can be so enormous is something that took us by surprise. At a time when the group was going through emotional turmoil, the symbol of the rising sun brought the different parts of the group together, helped us as an organization to re-energize ourselves, cross the bridge, and to get started on the process of change. The learning was quite striking. The need to relate, to belong, to a club, to an association, basically to some sort of a fraternity, is inherent in all of us. The corporate identity served that need as also as a proxy for a very charismatic leader who was greatly missed. At another level, it made an emotional connect that wove the group together into an integrated whole. The rising sun, in a very strange way, brought a new optimism and served as a rallying point for the organization. And that really, in a strategic way, was the first positive step for us in our process of change. The lesson we learned is that symbolism can and does have a positive impact. In our case, it was the corporate identity. In another situation, the symbol could well be different. 3. It is stating the somewhat obvious, but I believe it is important to say it all the same. A critical area in any process of change is that of communication. The process of transformation, I believe, is about communication, communication, and more communication. In the case of an organization going through the pangs of change, I do not believe that you can ever over-communicate. And I cannot think of any instance where, in our case, the change process was set back because of over-communicating. Looking back, however, I can think of several instances where, in retrospect, I think we could have communicated better, faster, and more. Using technology to advantage in communication can add a zing to the process. Reaching out to as large an audience as possible, engaging with small groups, opinion makers, and those who may be impacted adversely is obviously critical, and communication is the key to make that happen. Another significant part of the learning about communication has also been that the same message is filtered differently by different audiences within the organization, given each one's own unique perspective, worldview, and context. Some time back, I learned about a survey conducted by the United Nations. It was an international survey and it had just one question. The question was, please give your honest opinion on the shortage of food in the rest of the world and suggest solutions. The information was required urgently, but unfortunately the survey was a huge failure. Because in Western Europe, they couldn't understand the meaning of the word shortage. No one there had ever experienced a shortage of anything. In Eastern Europe, they couldn't understand what was meant by the word opinion. Having been under socialist rule for years, no one there had ever volunteered an opinion. In the Middle East, they couldn't understand what was meant by solution. For obvious reasons, there never had been any solution to any of the difficult problems there. In Africa, sadly, they couldn't understand the meaning of the word food. In Asia, they couldn't understand what was meant by honest. And in the United States, they could not understand what is meant by the rest of the world. So, on a more serious note, the point to be made is that it is important to customize information so that different audiences within the organization understand the message in the right context and in the way it was intended. So the third takeaway for us has been that when you succeed in the transformation, it is because your communication worked. Fourth, different people have different roles to play in the process of communication. I believe that the management of most organizations focus sharply on their high performers, the people with the high potential, or the high flyers as they're commonly referred to. That is of course important, but I believe what is equally important is to focus on that bulk of the organization who are somewhat dismissively referred to in management jargon as the stayers. These are people who make the day-to-day, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter things happen. Their role in the process of change is critical. Just as 70% of the human body is made up of water, so also 70% of any organization is made up of people who follow the rules, who keep it moving ahead at a steady pace. You cannot have everyone setting the rules. You need people who follow the rules, people who may not contribute in a significant way intellectually, but who are happy to implement the rules diligently. Ignoring this segment of people in a process of change, I believe, can lead to use the analogy of the human body again to organizational dehydration. For sustaining the performance, you need to engage this mass, this quiet majority, and recognize them. These are the people who are often less visible, but who to a significant extent make the organization what it is. So we owe it to this mass to keep them motivated, to recognize their contribution, which very often gets overshadowed by the performance of the stars. Fifth, there is something to be said about the virtue of organizations that are heterogeneous in their composition. Most long-standing business houses in India like ours have tended over a period of time to become homogeneous. This is apparent in the kind of people that we recruit, in the patterns of behavior that we espouse, leading to a cloning impact of what we believe is the right kind of manager or the right kind of leader who would be successful in our own organizational context. Our experience has been that having a heterogeneous mix of people, though very difficult to lead, helps in the process of change. You need the fast pacers, the spinners, the good wicket keepers, just as much as the pinch hitters to become a winning team. It has been our experience that altering the genetic coding, albeit carefully, can be a productive exercise that can significantly improve the quality of constructive dissent and the quality of decision making, particularly in a period of rapid change. Bringing in people from organizations with different cultures, who have different skill sets, a new pair of eyes, can be useful so long as they all bond with the basic values of your workplace. So moving away from homogeneity or creating a climate that embraces different cultures and gives them wings, whilst keeping the organization rooted in its core values, can be a productive exercise and a useful catalyst in the change process. Sixth, it has been our learning that it is good to analyze failures with a view not to repeat the same mistakes, but what is more critical is to showcase success. We have created a platform called the Aditya Birla Awards, where team achievements across the organization are recognized every year. The genesis of these awards is that each one of us needs something to be inspired by, more so when we are being stretched in all directions in the process of metamorphosis. Showcasing success does that for you. It inspires, it motivates, it has a ripple impact in the organization which cannot be accounted for numerically but has huge qualitative returns. Importantly, it has been our belief that whilst the individual stars, the sterling performers, are important, it is the creating of star teams across the organization that is most critical. Individual stars who cannot form a part of star teams are of little value. In fact, they can be disruptive instead of being productive. So showcasing success and applauding it is critical. It creates a surround sound that says, we can do it, an ambience of an organization in celebration, and the impact of it can be quite astounding. 7. A considerable part of the change process for us reflects shifts in geography, as well as a rapid pace of mergers and acquisitions. The result is that the organization is faced with the challenge of having to integrate with a culture that is foreign to it and practices that it has been unexposed to. For example, in our case, in our group, an Indian manager who moves to Thailand on secondment takes time to adjust to the fact that the night shift has only women workers, something that is illegal in India. Similarly, one of our Indian managers who is posted to our Australian mines can find the task of ferrying workers to the mine site by an aircraft to and fro each day a rather unusual experience. I have to say that our long-standing presence overseas and the exposure it brought with it has made the task of adapting to different cultures a lot easier. All the same, an attitude of willingness to learn and assimilate from different cultures is an absolute must. 8. Tracking the organizational climate, especially in the process of catharsis, we believe is critical simply because you cannot set a problem right until it is correctly diagnosed. We have relied heavily on the organizational health study methodology. In 2000, the study covered 7,200 managers in 50 locations. By 2002, it had extended to 8,700 managers in 65 locations. This year, we have covered 10,000 managers in 90 locations. For us, the organizational health survey is the barometer of the happiness at work index in the group. The revelation for us has been that the feedback from the surveys has been more brutal and honest than we had ever imagined. In the same unit, scores have ranged from very high to very low on different parameters. This indicates that the feedback is honest, should be taken seriously and acted upon. And year after year, teams have worked with exactitude, attacking the specific problems of each unit in a way that involves people from across the organization. Tracking organizational health has become an institutionalized process for us and has paid us huge dividends. So the learning on this front has been that seeking feedback in an institutionalized way and acting on it has been a huge positive in the process of change. The underlying philosophy is that whilst it is the duty of the management to ensure that the company is a good employer, the responsibility for ensuring that it is a great place to work in is shared across the length and breadth of any organization. And finally, 9. Today, every company puts a premium on speed. We loathe anything that is not fast enough for obvious reasons. In the process of transformation, however, one learning that stands out for us has been that it is only infinite and indefinite patience that brings immediate results. Different parts of the organization respond differently to the change stimuli. It is unrealistic to expect the transformation process to take off at the same pace throughout. Just the other day, I had a friend telling me that the only exercise his wife ever does is to jump to conclusions. In a change process too, people are quick to jump to conclusions as to the motive behind the process, how it will impact them, and the shifts in the balance of power that it will create. Internalizing the process of change takes its own course, however fast one might want to push it through. There is no getting away from it, and therefore there is no substitute for consistency. We have, when I look back, in some instances, I believe, tended to fall a prey to what one might call the last mile exhaustion. It is that period in the journey of change where the novelty of the good and the new ideas have faded, where sufficient ground has been covered and the goal is near, but yet not quite so. It is sustaining the organization's willpower and stamina through that last mile that very often makes or breaks the process of change. So the 9th and final takeaway has been that one must guard against falling prey to the last mile exhaustion in the journey of change. I want to end with a quote from Eric Offer. In times of change, the learner will inherit the earth, while the learned are beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists.